The gospel reading for November 6th was Luke 20:27-38. Forgive me because I'm probably going to mispronounce some names and titles. Some of the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to Jesus with the question. Teacher, they said, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers. The first one married a woman and died childless. The second, and then the third, married her. And in the same way, the 7 died, leaving no children. Finally, the woman died too. Now then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be, since the 7 were married to her? Jesus replied, the people of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of taking part in the age to come and in the resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage, and they can no longer die, for they are like the angels. They are God's children, since they are children of the resurrection. But in the account of the burning bush, even Moses showed that the dead rise, for he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive. So now here's a short sermon about that passage. So anyone who knows me knows I am a fan of asking questions, and I firmly believe that all theological concepts are up to discussion and up for debate. And even if we don't come to a complete agreement, or any agreement at all, actually, I believe we all have so much to learn from each other, even from those that have completely, radically different theological beliefs. Listening to others, sharing our deepest beliefs while allowing others to share theirs, enable connection to one another and to God. But of course, this depends on whether those participating in this discussion or debate are actually seeking to understand the other person and are willing to listen. Oftentimes, these discussions and debates lead to more division and worse, the dehumanization of those we disagree with. The purpose is more often to enforce what we believe to be the correct belief rather than learning from others. We enter into these discussions not out of a sense of curiosity and wonder, but with a desire to trap the other person into saying something that we think is heretical so that we can just tear them apart. We may ask trick, nonsensical questions, hoping we can get the other person into saying something that we can then use to prove their lack of faith or to prove that they aren't a real Christian. I've been on the receiving end of those type of questions and debates, and I can tell you, it's not fun. In a similar way, the Sadducees aren't asking this question in good faith. In fact, they do not believe in a resurrection, so the question is a bit nonsensical. But again, the purpose of their question isn't to plumb the depths of Jesus's knowledge or to learn why Jesus believes in resurrection, but the purpose is to entrap and humiliate Jesus. They ask a nonsensical question, expecting a nonsensical answer. They were probably hoping that Jesus would say something ridiculous so that they could tear apart Jesus's answer and his larger ministry. But Jesus, seeing right through this trap, doesn't get bogged down into a 20-minute debate about whether the resurrection is real or not. He affirms that the resurrection is real, but he doesn't spend 15 minutes arguing his point of view. Nor does Jesus get bogged down in the details of the particulars of what the life to come will look like. Because one can imagine that the question of who the woman is married to can lead to all sorts of different theological tangents. Can she have children after the resurrection? Whose children will she have? And these tangents could lead into debates that go on and on for hours and have no resolution. Instead, Jesus simply points out that in the life to come, things are radically different. The systems of hierarchy and oppression will cease to exist. Remember, Marriage then wasn't necessarily about romantic feelings and love. It was often about property and socioeconomic status. Even the way the question is phrased hints at this understanding of marriage. The woman in the example isn't treated as a full human, simply as a piece of property passed to one man and then to another. Her only purpose is to be married and have children. And when she can't fulfill that with one brother, she's given over to 6 others. Then Flash commentary on this passage explains that Jesus's response affirms that systems of oppression and hierarchy will not be found in the new life that God brings. The commentary states, and I quote, "No more of this in the life of God. No more of women as possessions or mere objects of reproduction. No more being given in marriage as of property. Only freedom, only mutuality, only belovedness, regardless of interest in reproduction or ability or sexuality." I can imagine the exasperated tone as Jesus answers this question because the Sadducees were missing the point of the resurrection. They were so intent on trapping Jesus, on pointing out the foolishness of Jesus' belief in the resurrection, that they missed the point not only of the resurrection, but of Jesus' message in general, that oppressive structures of this world will cease to exist. And it's easy to pick on the Sadducees and think that we, in the 21st century, are so much more enlightened and intelligent. It is easy to assume that when it comes to theological discourse, our motives are pure. Part of this sense of superiority can be attributed to pervasive anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism in Western Christianity. Both anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism need to be unequivocally condemned. And I would like to remind readers and listeners that the debate Jesus had with religious leaders of his time was an intra-religious dialogue and debate, meaning Jesus, as a Jewish person, was discussing with other Jewish people their beliefs. It was not a case of Jesus demonstrating Christianity was better than Judaism, since Christianity did not exist. Another reason why we seem to think that we are more enlightened is that we refuse to acknowledge the ways in which we are often so obsessed with being right and proving other people wrong that we often miss the larger picture. We focus on the minutiae, and everyone who doesn't agree exactly with our theology is someone to be bullied and mocked. The very concepts that are supposed to be tools of liberation and justice, that are supposed to usher in connectedness with God and with each other, are often turned into traps to test whether those who are debating with us are orthodox enough. And those who don't meet our standard of orthodoxy are ridiculed, are told they have no place in the Church of God. In other words, we maintain and replicate the very systems of division that is practiced in dominant society. We forget the gospel of Christ and insist on a gospel of exclusion. We miss the point. The point of the gospel isn't to try and entrap others whose theological beliefs are different. It isn't to humiliate them or to prove why their beliefs are foolish, but it is to dismantle systems of oppression and violence. Again, I'm not saying there isn't room for discussion or debate. I, for one, love talking theology. But when we become so trapped in proving others wrong and silencing those whose theology differs from us, we miss the point of the gospel and we replicate systems of harm.